Our next presenter, Elizabeth Weil Greenberg, is Communication Director for the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Her topic is social media use in advocacy and activism.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that really fascinating presentation. It's exciting to hear things like that and then sort of think about how they affect your sort of everyday use of social media. I apologize first for being a little bit late, New Jersey transit troubles, of course. My name is Elizabeth, and I work with the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, which is a nonprofit organization based in Newark, New Jersey. And our main goal is to try to create a more progressive New Jersey. And so what does that mean to us? That means ensuring that each person in New Jersey has economic opportunity through being able to connect to employment that pays a living wage and has opportunities for advancement. One issue that we've been working on most of the time that I've been there is criminal justice reform, especially when it comes to our juvenile justice system and reducing racial disparities in both our adult and juvenile systems. So what I'm going to talk about today is how we use social media to try to get our message out to community members as well as to elected officials, because ultimately our goal and our sort of theory of change is that the people in this room, that we have to push our legislators to do the right thing. And so I'm going to talk about how that theory of change relates to how we use social media. So the first photo I'm going to show is one of the March on Washington from 1963 in DC. Maybe some of your grandparents or parents attended. My mother attended this march. And this, of course, was a very, very famous march for civil rights. It's a really beautiful photo. It shows how many people came out that day to fight for civil rights. The next photo I'm going to show is from earlier this year. Maybe some of you participated in this, was the Women's March. This is actually a really incredible photo that I found in the Yale newspaper of the march in New York. And what you can see really powerfully is, number one, just the mass of people that went out that day, and also the pink hats, which sort of became sort of this real sensation that day. And I show these photos to show what social media can't do and what it can't replace. And what it can't replace is what's people in this country have been doing for, really decades, if not centuries, which is grassroots activism and organizing. And so social media can't, and it shouldn't replace knocking on doors when you believe in an issue and having that face-to-face conversation with someone if you're supporting a specific candidate, or maybe there's a ballot measure that you're passionate about. Nothing will ever replace going door to door and having that conversation with people who agree with you, with people who disagree with you, with people who maybe just need more information on the issue. It can't replace making phone calls to other community members about an issue that you care about, or to elected officials. There was recently an article in the New York Times that talked about the power of making just one phone call to an elected official, because just that time that they have to take away from whatever else they're doing really makes an impact. It shows that elected official, well, my constituent really cares enough about this issue to take time out of her day to make a 5-minute call. It can't replace going or organizing a rally like the photos that we saw earlier, right? So I think it's really important for us to put social media and activism in a proper context. But social media can do really important things, and as a communications director, I like using social media because I can't go out always and knock on doors or make phone calls, and so this helps me amplify our work in a different way. So here's what it can do really well. It allows us to tell stories in a really creative way using visuals or using sort of a very succinct amount of words. I think it was Judy Blume, the children's author, who said she felt Twitter was akin to poetry because it made her have to think, what are the fewest number of words I can use to get my point across, which I think is a really kind of interesting and creative way to think about how we tweet and post on Facebook. It also can strengthen our partnerships. If we're trying to affect social change, we can't and we shouldn't do it alone, right? You need community members with you. You need allies and friends with you. And finally, and importantly, it helps to educate your audience, whether that's other community members, other people in your, in your school or in your city or town, or whether it's elected officials. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how at the Institute we use social media to tell a story visually. And I'll be completely upfront. I am a writer. I am terrible with technology. I'm terrible at creating images. And so I've always really kind of relied on writing a press release and then taking out certain facts from that press release. And it was really being at the Institute and working with the president and CEO, Ryan P. Haygood, who has actually this very creative visual mind that sort of showed me how I can tell a story more effectively on social media by using visual images. So this is something I mentioned that one of the issues that we're really passionate about is reforming the juvenile justice system. And at the Institute, we have a very bold view about juvenile justice, which is that we don't think any child should be incarcerated. Currently, New Jersey has 3 youth prisons that we operate. We don't think that this is where children should be who have made, at times really tragic mistakes. We think there's another way. So we work with a national partner who adopts the same view that we have, and they were kind enough to organize a poll for us of New Jersey adults and ask them a series of questions about youth incarceration and alternatives to incarceration for youth. And what was the point of this? The point was to show politicians that you have cover if you choose to adopt our view, that people in New Jersey will support you, and that there's actually widespread support for handling children who make mistakes in a different way than our state has done for the last few decades. And so this is an excerpt from our press release, which pulls out the important data. Our top line message was that almost 85% of people in New Jersey believe the youth justice system should focus more on rehabilitation instead of incarceration and punishment. This was our top line message. When we spoke to the press, this is what we said over and over and over again. There were other things in terms of 75% agree that counseling and education for youth in the system will save tax dollars in the long run. So there it was important for us to also let community members and politicians know, not only do we feel like this is the moral and right thing to do, people actually believe, and rightfully so, that this will save money. And so we wanted to make sure we got both of those arguments, both the moral and the sort of more fiscal and pragmatic argument across. And so this is what we sent to our people on our press list. This is what we posted on our website. But what did we put on social media? This is what we chose to put on social media. A really powerful, to me, very haunting image of a young person who is incarcerated. Unfortunately, he is a very typical young person in New Jersey who is incarcerated because we have extreme racial disparities in our youth, in our out of placement youth facilities, even though Black and white youth have similar rates of offending. And so this was one image that we used. This was a second that we used, and we put these out throughout on Twitter and Facebook throughout the week. We used them actually. We tried not to spam them, although we were really excited about these images, but we did use them frequently, usually with a different top-line message, a different introductory message. And then this was the third one again. So the next part that I want to talk about is the way we use social media at the Institute is to also, in the way we frame it, is to create a culture of generosity. When I first started at the Institute, I was their first communications director, and one of my colleagues said, I noticed that you retweet other organizations a lot and that you applaud their work a lot, and you'll have tweets like, "Great work, Drug Policy Alliance, you got that reentry bill passed." And he said to me, "Why do you do that? Why don't you just promote our work?" And I said, because I come from a place of generosity. And the fact is we're all on the same team here. We're all working towards the same goal, which is a more progressive New Jersey. And social media is a great way to applaud your partners, to raise up their work. And so these are just two examples which are very typical. We will typically post something like this at least once a day. One highlights a training that the New Jersey Alliance on Immigrant Justice was holding, and the other was an interview that one of our very close partners did on one of our issues. Finally, we use social media to educate our audience. And as the press person at the Institute, my job, of course, is for every report we release or every event we hold, what's our plan? What's our plan for press? What's our strategy? And it's really easy, sort of when you're stretched thin and you work at a small organization, to make social media sort of the last thing on your to-do list. But it's important to plan ahead for it. Because we planned ahead for that release of the polling data, we were able to commission those really beautiful images that I think really affected people more than if we had just used the text language in our social media posts. The other way that we use social media, and this also connects to partnerships and creating partnerships, is we will create sample tweets and Facebook posts for our partners that they can use. We share our resources. We shared those social media images with our partners and said, please use these far and wide. We didn't ask for credit. We just wanted to get the message out there. Finally, and this is my last point, is we also use social media a lot during events. When someone is either attending an event or speaking at an event, I will ask, or either I will or I will ask a staff member to please tweet and take photos during that event. And we do that, number one, to support our partner's work who's hosting the event. Number two, there's a lot of great information that we hear in a room, and it's nice to be able to let people outside of that room know about it. And finally, what it does is it also shows our relevance. It shows we're active, we're out in the community, we're not just sitting behind a desk every day. And actually, my final point, and this is always a tough one, I think, especially for nonprofits, is we try to be very consistent in terms of how often we post and when we post. We don't want to have sort of a flurry of posts on Monday morning because we're rested from the weekend, and then by the end of the week, you see nothing. It's sort of radio silence. So I'm going to end there and turn it over to the next speaker.